What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and it's fitting. I go out of town after doing the Chelsea versus Brentford review, and then while I'm not able to talk about it, Chelsea go and have two of the craziest Premier League games that we've seen in a while. While I'm not able to talk about it. So I'm going to talk about it now. Sure, it's late, but better late than never. Is that going to work here? But before we get to that, first of all, I'll touch on the Blackburn game because there is something to talk about there. It wasn't a great game, but that in and of itself is a little concerning. Because you'd want, after such a disappointing result and performance against Brentford, you'd want to see a bit of bounce back. And it didn't feel like there really was at all. I didn't see anything really positive to get me excited because, we scored 2, we didn't give up any, but it's not like we really outplayed Blackburn. It's just we had more quality in the squad because we're a Premier League side, and they're, I think, a Championship or League One side. I can't remember which. But it's just a difference of quality. It wasn't necessarily a difference in performance. Because overall, I thought Blackburn really outworked us and outperformed us on the day. They just didn't have the quality up front to get the job done, and we had just enough quality up front to score a couple for us. So it wasn't exactly a convincing result, and why that really worried me is because it made me think about last year. Last year there were so many times where it didn't feel like we had enough desire, enough motivation to get out of the rut we were in. So you think about, you have the Arsenal game, which was disappointing, but good performance, and then it feels like everybody's heads drop, and then we lose to Brentford, and then we go to Blackburn, and it feels like, I guess we'll go out and play, and it doesn't look like anybody really wants to go play. So I'm looking at the Tottenham match, and I'm thinking, okay, rivalry match. Pochettino's got to be able to get the guys up for this one, right? And he did not. Because, the Tottenham match, wow, what a piss-poor performance. Just probably one of the worst 20-minute performances that I have seen from Chelsea in a while. Basically, since Pochettino came and took over, this has been the worst that we played, was that first 20 minutes against Tottenham, because we were awful. We weren't creating anything. Everybody looked like they didn't want to be there. Everybody was just running around like chickens with their head cut off. It was not anything what we would expect to see at this level. It was Premier League side, high school, toddler playing. It was so vast in quality. I don't know what happened. But thankfully, we managed to come out of there 4-1 winners thanks to some ridiculous moments. But I'm concerned, with some of these guys that we have. There's a very clear mentality issue. So I don't know what's got to change that. I thought Pochettino coming in would help change that. And again, he's done some stuff that has clearly shown the the difference in quality as a manager with Pochettino than we had with like Potter and Lampard. But overall, it still feels like the players we're bringing in are still mentally weak. And it doesn't really matter what manager you bring in. As long as you have these mentally weak players, you're going to have moments like this. So, digging into the Tottenham match a little bit more, though, in detail. Starting off, it was just right off the bat. They were honest, they were attacking us, and it felt like we were not ready to play. That first goal was probably some of the worst defense I've seen since... I don't even think Potter defended that poorly. It was bad. Kulusevski driving into the box, Colwill standing 5 or 6 yards off of him and still backing up. You got to close that space when he's inside the box. You can't let him have more than a yard. And you're all the way back. It was ridiculous that Colwill just continued to back off. And honestly, for me personally, I know he was out against Man City, so there might have been an injury problem, but just defensive-minded and me knowing the defensive side of the game since I played there a lot, I'm watching that going, that's not what you do as a defender. You do tend to back off if you're trying not to dive in, if you're trying to jockey with him, but when you're 5 yards away from him, you can't be that far away from him backing off, especially when he's inside the box. There's no reason that should be happening. So for Colwill, it's a little concerning that he allowed that to happen in the first place. But even after that goal, it didn't feel like anything changed. It felt like we were still just all over the place. The second one comes in. Thankfully, Son's marginally offside. But, Tottenham were just tearing us up. The moment that it changed, I felt, was the Udogi challenge, which, just to touch on the referee situation real quick, because obviously a lot of people have talked about it. I personally think, and I know I'm a little bit biased, but I thought the referees handled that game very well. I agree with what I've heard some people talk about, where the VAR was looking at stuff a little too long, and probably because they were so worried about getting stuff wrong that they're like, oh, we got to check everything detailed. So I do think there was a little, maybe too much time being taken by VAR, but ultimately they did get everything correct. Every call they made outside of maybe the Romero challenge on Colwell, because that, for me, I know there's not a whole lot of force behind it, but he just kicked him. He just straight up kicked him. There's no need for that. There's no need for that in the sport. It would be like if I went up to somebody and slapped them. Yeah, it's not a whole lot of force. I'm probably not doing any damage with a little smack. It doesn't matter. It's not part of the sport. It doesn't belong in the sport. So you're on the ground and you kick out at somebody and kick them in the back of the calf. It doesn't matter how hard you kick them. You can't do that. You shouldn't be doing that. So I thought personally that deserved a red card, and the fact that VAR didn't really look at it was a little weird to me. But ultimately, every other decision that was made by the referees, every big decision that was made, I felt they got correct. All of the offside calls, first of all, the ARs called them in real time, and then VAR went and confirmed that they were correct. Even, I thought Caicedo's was one that whenever they called it off, I was like, there's no way. And then you watch back, and sure enough, Jackson was, basically in the line of the keeper, and he was marginally offside. So they called all of the offsides correctly. The two, I guess, big red card decisions. First of all, Udogi's first challenge, I'm okay with that being a yellow card. Because while it is a dangerous challenge, you can't go in 2 foot straight legged. He didn't really catch Sterling. So I'm okay with giving him a warning in that. And like, hey, that's not okay. You can't, if you caught him, you'd be gone. Romero, I know there have been a lot of people who have claimed, oh, the sport's just going soft if that's not a good challenge. Here's the thing. He goes in to hurt him. I mean, he already kicked Colwell off the ball. This is a situation where you can see as soon as he clears it, he's leaving his foot and just going straight into Fernandez's calf, shin, that area. Like, he is planning, I'm about to kick this ball and I'm going to take you with it. That's not okay. Especially where he caught Fernandez, that's a leg-breaking area where you catch that at the right angle and the right force, that's snapping one of his bones in half. So he's very lucky he didn't do any permanent damage on Fernandez, because honestly, I think if somebody goes in with force, because we've seen a couple of challenges where they just happen to catch the guy at the wrong angle and it ends up doing some serious damage and legs turning the wrong way. But it's very clear they weren't going in to hurt. They were just going in to either make a challenge or to win the ball. This is a situation where Romero clearly, this is part of why I don't like Romero. I think he's overrated as a player, but there's a lot of stuff that he does that's dirty and shady. And this is an instance where that force that he comes through with his studs onto his, that's ridiculous. And that should not be in the game at all. So I know, again, there are probably more, I don't even know what you would call them, purists of the game that are like, no, you should be able to just kick the shit out of him and then, oh yeah, you can't have all these pansies playing where they can't kick the other. How is that entertaining? You watch these good players get injured because all of these ridiculous challenges are coming in. It's like, oh yeah, those were the days. Come on. As far as Udogi's second yellow, it's a good call. It's one of those, it is a yellow card challenge. Some referees, maybe because he's on a yellow, would give that sort of leeway of hey, that's it, no more. But when you look at the challenge itself, Sterling, obviously terrible pass to stop our counterattack that was going on. But he gets the ball first. He would be through going down the line with 2 players in the box, so that's a good opportunity that Udogi is stopping. Doesn't get the ball at all. It is a clear yellow card challenge. It's just up to the referee whether he wants to be lenient or not, and I think probably because the temperature was already rising, or had already risen, obviously, with Romero's card in the first half, I think the referee was just trying to, nope, we're done. We're not giving any leeway. You're going to go sliding in on a challenge like that, you're getting your second yellow. And then the other, I guess, moment of contention was Sterling's handball, which, I mean, I'm okay with that being a handball. It is technically Sterling's natural position because we know he runs like this. But, I mean, yeah, where his hand is, it's up high. Because it traps the ball into his path right before he scores, it is kind of, I'm understanding of them wanting to call that a handball. And yeah, if it happened to us where that bounced off of somebody's hand and fell right to their feet, even if it was unintentional and in a natural position, if it hits their hand and lands at their feet and they score with it, I would be upset too if the referees didn't pull it back. So, but anyways, referees aside though, the Udogie challenge really, it felt like sparked a fire finally. Because it felt like after that moment we started fighting a little bit more. We started pushing them. We started really becoming more aggressive. And I feel like that's where the game did start to turn a little bit and we started to show what we are capable of. However, once they went down to 10 men, it's like we scored, we got the equalizer, and then we just, okay guys, let's pull it back a little bit. We were cranking up the gears, now let's just pull it back a little bit. Let's just cruise on down. Because it went right back to the problems we were having before. We couldn't score. Players were doing stupid stuff in the box. I mean, it was ridiculous. And when they went down to 9 men, it got even worse. Because then at that point, Tottenham were still playing the high line. There's so much space in behind. We have 2 extra players, and we still couldn't break them down for the majority of the match. And then we finally do. After multiple tries, Sterling finally breaks the line on time after several failed attempts. Jackson finally doesn't screw it up and puts it in the back of the net with just him and the goalkeeper there. So finally, we break it down. And then they let them go and score. Thankfully, Dyer's offside, but still. And then beyond that, we're holding on to that 1-goal lead for so long because we're not putting the game away. And then Son nearly comes and equalizes it. And then thankfully, right after that, we go and score our third and then eventually our fourth. But why are we still being challenged by this 9-man team when we should have no problem? They've been down to 10 for over half the match, and they've been down to 9 for over a third of the match, and yet we still cannot find a way to get past them for a majority of it. And a lot of that is just down to, again, it felt like the desire, the will, the wanting to be there and wanting to challenge and play, it felt like it wasn't there from anybody. So, yeah, it was a thoroughly frustrating game. I didn't feel like most anybody had a good game in that match. I would say Palmer so far has been probably our most consistent player. The problem is because Sterling and Jackson were so just, it felt like non-existent in that match because it felt like their runs were not timed well. It felt like they weren't really doing much with it. It felt like Palmer was not quite as effective in that match. But in my opinion, he's still very good at what he does, and he still is our most creative player for the majority of the match. So because of that, I will say I would give a little bit of credit to. I thought he did well. But everybody else I thought was just really off the pace and not good enough. And it was really concerning too because we're going into the Man City match the following weekend, and I'm looking at this thinking, God, we can hardly handle this with 9-man Tottenham. What are we going to do against Man City? And not that Man City's been phenomenal this season. They clearly have not been at the same level that they were the past couple seasons, but they're still very good. They're still the best team for this season so far, even with their problems. So I'm looking at this performance against Tottenham, I'm thinking there's no way. So then we get to that match against Man City, and I guess maybe getting a win against rivals or maybe just, putting 4 past another Premier League team. I don't know what it was. Something sparked, finally. Ever since the Brentford match. Honestly, since we performed well against Arsenal, I was looking for that type of performance again. I was looking for that excitement again. And the Man City match, we finally got it. We finally got that type of performance again. We got that feeling of, hey, these guys want to play. Hey, we've got a good team. We've got good quality out there. If they can just, put a couple of more things together, if we can get a couple of extra players that we need in key positions, we've got a solid team. We could challenge for top 4, no problem. But the problem is these performances are very few and far between. And not only that, I heard a couple of people, because I did watch some analysis after the game, and there were a couple of people talking about this. We are a good team in situations like against Man City where we're going toe to toe. That's perfectly fine. Are we still going to be able to do this against teams that can pack it in, though? Probably not. I still don't think we have that type of quality in there, but at least it's good to see, whenever we do face a team like Man City or your Arsenals, your Liverpools, these teams that do like to step out and really push you high and go at you a lot more, we do have the capability of going toe to toe with them and really taking them out of their element and causing them some problems. We can do that, which is good. Now we need to we need to fix our Achilles heel, which is, of course, breaking down those teams that pack it in, put 12 men behind the ball, including the the manager, the referee, put all of them back there. We need to have those games figured out because typically that's what we're going to see more of. When we face the top, I would say 6 or 7, we'll face those teams like Man City where they are going to step out more. Your Tottenhams where they'll go to put a high line basically on the midfield. Those are the games that we seem to do okay in. We've got to figure out how are we going to break down those teams. But looking specifically at the Man City match and some of the key points to talk about, first of all, it is very clear that the FA once again wants Man City to win the league because after, again, I thought the referees did a great job at the Tottenham match. Now I'm looking at it going, I think they only did a good job because all of the calls that were supposed to be called correctly, all of those decisions, they were against Tottenham. Like those red cards, they were correct, but they were against Tottenham. So they wanted to make sure they got those right because Tottenham were the only team threatening Man City at the time. Now that we're facing Man City, now all of a sudden, whenever the striker pulls on one of our defenders and then feels a slight tug and just falls like a sack of potatoes, yeah, that's a penalty. What? Oh man, it's one of those like VAR was looking so hard in that Tottenham match. Was really we gotta pinpoint all this stuff. And then you get to the Man City match and they're like, hey, there was a slight touch. We're good. We don't need to look at that anymore. We're good. Hello? Do your freaking jobs, please. But despite that, looking at the game overall, I mean, clearly we have some defensive issues still. I think some of that is down to Disasi, still not, in my opinion, convinced by him. He kind of reminds me a bit of Koulibaly. Like, he's solid, he can do the job decently enough, but he's not going to be your defensive rock. He's not a Rudiger. He's not that player that's going to really be a beast back there. And because of that, Silva, while he can read the game well, he's only one guy, and he's not as mobile anymore. So when he's in a back two, he's not going to be as effective defensively because he's only covering one side of the field instead of being a deeper player that can read the match and move to wherever he needs to go. He has to typically stay on one side of the field and make the challenges over there. So basically, you get it away from Silva or you just get in behind him. He doesn't have the speed to catch up. It's a lot easier to break us down in that case. So I'm not saying we need to go to a back three because I do think the 4-2-3-1 is working for us right now. But I think it might be time, one, to move on from Silva. Or at least if you're going to have Silva back there, we need another defender like Rudiger who can be sort of the, I guess I'll call it the Van Dijk role because that is a role that I think a lot of teams have started to pick up on a bit more. The guys that are not necessarily great defenders but have enough strength and speed so that if somebody gets in behind, they can be the ones to chase them and challenge them. So we do need another player like that because I don't think Disasi is that level. But outside of the 4 goals that we gave up, our attack in the game was, phenomenal. We were moving things all over. Man City was looking a little shaky, but I do think some of that is because of how well we worked the ball, how well our attack was just flowing in and out, constantly overloading aside from time to time. Sterling was on top of his game. I thought Palmer was fantastic. Gallagher was at the top of his game. And again, showing why Potter was an idiot to try to play him as a deeper player, because this is what he's good at. Playing in behind the striker, but putting pressure on a defense that has the ball. Now, with that being said, we know a lot of teams are not going to have this much of the ball like Man City does. So in those games, he may not be as effective. But definitely in games like this against the higher sides, the sides that are going to keep a lot more possession in the back and try to pass it through you, Gallagher is a great player to have up there for situations like this. On top of that, I thought Jackson, still not great, still had a couple of chances I feel like he could have done a little bit better on, but I thought he looked a lot more aware and just ready to make a challenge, ready to really find a position to take up to cause the defense some trouble. In the defensive mid part, I mean, Fernandez looked back to his best because I thought he was a little sluggish against Tottenham. I thought he looked very solid, which he's shown that capability in there before. We saw more of it against Man City. Caicedo was the only weak point, and that's just, unfortunately, we picked up a player who's not got the capability of playing at this level for a team like Chelsea. He might fit into a team like Brighton, but he's definitely not 100 and whatever million that we got him for. Because, yeah, I mean, how many times did he get turned in the midfield? It was ridiculous. But even, I mean, in the back line, you got James looking a little bit more ready and awake to what's going on. Still has his moments where he's turned off, but overall I thought he looks a lot better and a lot more fit and hopefully doesn't deal with that injury too much more. Cucurella, like I said, he's come leaps and bounds with Pochettino. I can't believe this is the same Cucurella that we had last season. I'm wondering if they replaced him. It's a possibility, some body snatcher stuff going on. But yeah, he looks like he's flying at the moment. And with him, and whenever Chilwell comes back, if Colwill can come back a little bit more, awake than what we saw against Tottenham, I mean, we have a solid, I guess, fullback, like wide play. Because there's just a lot of options that we have out there of players that we can interchange. You got Mudryk coming in off the bench, and he's got the pace to really trouble a high back line. Unfortunately, that's kind of it. I mean, Broya coming off the bench, obviously he's the one that wins the penalty to tie it late. I think he's going to be a little bit more effective than Jackson against the teams that tend to sit deep. So I hope he can stay fit because I think he's capable of doing that. I think that's about all there is to talk about, though, because Ugochukwu came in, but I'm still not seeing much from him, if I'm being honest. And Gusto came on, and he looks okay. He is growing into it. I had my problems with him. I still do have some problems with him. But I think overall he's showing that he is growing as a player, which is good to see because, I mean, he is young. So obviously giving him a chance to grow is a good thing. But, yeah, I think overall I look at that Man City match, and I think this shows that we've got the capability to challenge for the top four. If we can get some of these guys back from injury and keep them fit, like Nkunku, like James, like Chilwell, Broya, I think those players will fill in some of these gaps that we have. However, we also need to be looking in January because we need a goalkeeper for sure because Sanchez is still not, he's not doing it. He makes a couple of good saves here and there. His passing is still shit. I still cannot think of a forward pass that he made in the past few games. And then Petrovic obviously was not ready. I don't know why we went and got him if he wasn't ready to come in and challenge for that starting spot. So we need a keeper. I think we need another center back and less players like Chalobah or I know Badiashile has kind of come in. I think Fofana's out for still a few more months now. So we need another defender, though. We need another defender to sit alongside Silva and have the capability of handling their side of the field a lot better than Disasi is doing at the moment. And then we need a defensive mid because, as we've seen, Caicedo's not cutting it, and I know they're not going to cut him, even though he should be, because, hey, you spend that much money on him, you don't want to just give up after, half a season. But, I mean, if I'm being honest, the thing, I'm looking at Gusto, and I'm looking at a couple of the other guys, like Mudryk, you look at him, Jackson, you look at him. I mean, some of these players that we're picking up, they're not cutting it at the moment, but they have a chance to grow into it because they're not that young. Whereas, I'm going to have to look this up real quick because I don't want to seem really stupid. Caicedo, he's 22. So still, he is younger. I think Mudryk's 21. Jackson, I think, is 20, 21, somewhere in there. Gusto, I think, is 19 or 20. So they are, like early early in their career. Caicedo is also younger, 22, but at 22 going into 23, you should start to see, all right, he's starting to find his place. He's starting to find his form. We saw, I think back to those Brighton matches. I can't think of anything that he brought to Brighton that he's bringing here. I don't see what he's doing for us, what he's bringing to the team. So, yes, he still does have time to grow. He is still younger, so there is a chance that he could grow into it. But I'm looking at him and going, I'm not seeing that growth. I'm not seeing him improve much at all. Whereas I look at players like Gusto and I'm thinking, yeah, he's getting better. I look at Fernandes, he's getting better. Jackson, he's improving slowly. I'm seeing that slight growth, even with Cucurella, who's also not that young, but Pochettino comes in. Cucurella is still not great, but I'm seeing that improvement from him. Caicedo, I guess he's not shit anymore like he was the first couple games, but I don't see how he's getting better. I just see how he's not as bad. I see how he's not terrible anymore. But going from not terrible to being just not a player, not effective, that's not really what I want to see. I want to see a player who is, okay, well, he's not great right now, but he's growing and he's getting better, and we're starting to see, okay, this is what he can bring. I think that goal against Man City that that was ruled offside, that was the only thing that I've seen him do that's made me go, okay, maybe he can do something. One thing out of how many matches now have we seen him? Like probably 10, maybe? I don't know. Feels like 10. We've seen him several matches now, and that is the only time that I've looked at him and gone, he did something good. Every other match, it's just been awful. He's not helped us. He's not been good. He's not been doing anything effective for the team. Why did we pick him up? But we need to improve in that position. We needed to in the offseason. Everybody said Caicedo was the one to get. Lavia from Southampton, he's the one to get, and he's been injured for all of the first part of the season. So we have players in here. Problem is we're not seeing that improvement in the midfield that we need to see. So in January, I don't know how the club's being run. I still think Bowley's doing a terrible job running it. But we need some improvement in our transfer spending. We need to look at these players more. First of all, find out if they have a history of injury, because apparently that's an issue with us. But also look and see, get players that fit into the system that your manager is trying to play. And I know I've said that before. Bowley apparently really needs to hear it. We need players that fit into Pochettino's system. We don't need to just go get whatever young players are out there that seem to be good, because clearly that's not working, because they don't fit into a system altogether. I look at some of these players. I look at Sterling and Mudryk. They are players that love to take the ball wide and drive past defenders and run in behind them and get into that space. That is in behind the defense. They're not going to be as effective against teams that like to pack it in. Jackson, he's also a player that loves to get in behind, but he's not going to do well against teams that like to pack it in. Gallagher as well, same thing. That's why some of those players look so good against Man City, is because they fit into a system that works against Man City. They fit in that type of team. But whenever we play, teams like Brentford, teams like Burnley, Nottingham Forest, the teams that we've had a little bit of trouble against, we play against those teams, and these players are suddenly ineffective. And it feels like they're just not even really there. So, I don't know. I look at all of the players we have some quality. I don't see how they all fit into the same team that are effective against every team. Are effective against all of the Premier League teams, not just against a few of them. So, yeah, that's kind of my thoughts overall. I know we've got Newcastle coming up this weekend. I think we've got Brighton as well. And then Everton, maybe? I don't know. And I know somewhere we've got the Carabao Cup quarters, I think, against Newcastle as well. So, overall, we managed to get through a bit of a rough spot. You got Arsenal, Brentford, Tottenham, Man City. We got through those 4 matches with, 5 points? So not great, especially considering Brentford you would expect to pick up 3 points. So I guess instead you picked up 3 points against Tottenham. So it's still not great though, and we're still sitting just mid-table, barely I think top half of the table. So it's still not good enough, but there are signs. There are some showing of positivity. Again, the Man City. There's a lot of about that match that I feel like we can take into future matches and get excited for because these players show they can play. They can play when they put their minds to it. They can play. They can put together some good performances and some good, just all around sequences of play. Just fantastic moments. We need it more consistently. We need to start doing it against those teams that are below us in the table. We need to start winning home matches again. There's still a lot that we need to do, but that game, and I mean, a lot of again, I watched some analysis stuff. A lot of people are talking about this feels like a turning point. It only is if we go into the next match with this same fire and desire and tenacity. Because I thought the same thing about the Arsenal match. I thought we looked great. We looked the best team in that match until the last 15, 20 minutes. Until Sanchez gave away that goal, we looked like we were just clearly above and beyond what Arsenal could bring. And then the next match we go out and we can't even beat Brentford. So it's not like we've not had a good performance this season so far. It's just this is Man City, who everybody holds as like their gods. So to go toe-to-toe with them and tie 4-4, that's kind of everybody's like, oh yeah, see, they're just as good. But anyways, I think that's about it though. So we'll see what happens this weekend. I should be able to talk about it. So I'll see you guys when we get there. But until then, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on these few matches that I missed? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Chelsea reviews, and I'll see you guys at this weekend's game. Peace out.